and welcome to Waraburra State School. My name is Tian Fa. Today's presentation will be about the beef industry, which plays a major role in our local community. We have been looking at this industry for several weeks now, and we have put together this presentation to share our new knowledge with you. First, we will be talking to Mr. Graeme Acton, who is a Gracemere. We will now cross to Michaela Borton.
Good afternoon, my name is Michaela Borton. Today I'm interviewing Mr. Graeme Acton about being a grazier in our local community. What does being a grazier involve?
What does it involve? It involves a great deal of hard work and a tenacity to be really resilient and be able to handle the dry times and the adversities which affect you on the land. To be successful, I guess you have to be an eternal optimist and always look to the future.
What are some of the problems you face?
Major problems are weather. As you know, most of Australia is now in a major drought situation, in some places the worst for 100 years. That's our worst, the worst problems, but we can get too much rain and be major floods also, but probably second to droughts is the volatility in our marketplace, the highs and lows in our production, the prices we receive for our stock. That's probably one of our worst problems.
What changes have you seen in the industry?
Well, there's been a lot of changes in my 52 years, I guess, in the grazing industry. One of the most dramatic and rewarding changes has been the improvement in the breed of cattle. I'm old enough to recall the first Bos Indicus bloodlines that came into our herd. We crossbred our Aberdeen Angus breeding herd and our Hereford breeding herds. My father and grandfather did with Brahmins and Santa Gertrudis cattle. That's been one of the most significant change. Also the development of the vast areas of brigalow and softwood scrubs throughout central Queensland that have been developed and planted with improved pasture so that we can fatten our cattle and turn them off in prime condition to give the consumers the great quality beef that they enjoy in Australia. The instigation of polythene pipe for pumping water has been a wonderful innovation and a change that I've seen in my lifetime.
How do things change in a drought?
In a drought, your lifestyle changes dramatically. Firstly, it puts a lot more stress on yourself and your family and all your staff that work in your industry. There's a lot more pressures with water and feed. Most significantly, the cost of running your operation doubles. You have to feed your cattle supplements in the dry times to help them sustain their body weight. The cost of pumping water is much more significant. The whole cost of running your operation nearly doubles in a severe drought that we have now.
How many hours a day do you work?
Oh, on average about 12 hours a day.
How long have you been a grazier?
All my life.
How big is your property?
All in all, we have, my brother and I and our families, 1.5 million acres of country in central Queensland and the lower Gulf country.
How many people are involved in running your property?
In our operation, we're 50 people, staff that run our operation.
What roles do they play?
Oh, they play, they're all different roles, from managers down to cowboy gardeners to cooks and gillaroos, jackaroos, station hands, grader drivers, plant operators, all different roles, office staff, company secretary, marketing manager.
What breed of cattle do you have on your property?
Well, we have two lines of cattle. We have Santa Gertrudis and Brahmins. We have our own Santa Gertrudis stud at Malunga in the lower Gulf country, where we breed our own bulls for our commercial herd, and we have a significant herd of Brahmin cows, which we call our select herd, that we breed Brahmin bulls with as well. And probably 2/3 of our cattle are Brahmins and the other third are Santa Gertrudis.
How many cattle do you run on your property?
somewhere in the vicinity of 85,000 head.
How do you buy and sell cattle?
We sell our cattle that have prime cattle that are going to the works are consigned direct to the meatworks. The Australian Meat Holdings plant here at Dinmore in Rockhampton is where we're selling all our stock now. If we purchase store cattle, which we do when the opportunity arises, it's mostly from paddock sales or sometimes, as of just late, from the Gracemere store selling complex.
Do you go to auctions at all?
Mostly only on odd occasions when we go to the auctions at Gracemere to buy store cattle or to buy stud bulls at the Apis Creek Willangie sale at Charters Towers or different stud Santa sales around the nation.
How do you decide which cattle to sell?
Well, it's a visual appraisal when you consider the market is the right price and the cattle are finished. When what we call finished is they're put on the maximum weight in the minimum amount of time and they're in acceptable condition to sell.
How do you transport your cattle for sale?
Road trains. Matten's Livestock Transport from Mackay have been carting our cattle for 30 years in big road trains, either in 2 decks or 4 decks or 6 decks.
What is the average or ideal weight for a heifer ready for sale?
Well, the ideal weight for a domestic heifer is around 220 kilos dressed weight.
How much would a calf weigh when it is born?
Well, it depends on the breed and the condition of the mother at the time, and somewhere between 15 and 30 kilos.
Do you go to auctions at all? How do you think graziers will work in the future?
I think they'll work smarter in the future that they have done, and they'll have to survive. Not taking anything away from our fathers and our grandfathers and develop this great nation to what it is today.
Thank you for your time and answers, Mr. Acton.
Thanks, man.
Now back to Tiana.
Thank you, Michaela, for sharing that with us. Since cattle first arrived in Australia with the first fleet in 1788, major changes have occurred in the beef industry. One of these changes was the introduction of trucks to move cattle long distances instead of the more traditional method, droving. Next, Sheree Fraser will be talking to Mr. Virgil Kenny, who has managed the Gracemere operations of Porter's Transport for the last 7 years. Mr. Kenny is responsible for organising and coordinating livestock movement.
Good morning, my name is Sheree Fraser. Today I will be talking to Mr. Virgil Kenny, the manager of Porter's Transport, who's going to tell us about the truck driving side of the beef industry. What do you think is different about the role of a truck driver now and compared to 50 years ago?
50 years ago, all livestock movements were mainly done by the drovers. They still walk the cattle down the stock routes. With the intervention of road transports and better roads, we're seeing where we now shift the larger mobs of cattle in a shorter span of time over a much longer distance.
What do you enjoy most about your job?
You're never in the one place for very long. You do get to travel around quite a lot of Queensland. You do meet all sorts of interesting people and see a lot of different places.
What hours do your truck drivers work a week?
They work long hours. It's a job that can't be defined from 9 to 5. However, we are governed by the Department of Transport to work within certain parameters, so as to make sure that our drivers don't suffer from fatigue. They get certain rest periods and several rest stops, so as to keep everything safe on the roads.
Do your truck drivers own their trucks?
No, all our vehicles are owned by Colin and Murray Porter, that's Porter's Transport. they own prime movers. In excess of originally started off with body trucks in Kingaroy some 36 years ago. They now have a depot, main depot is still in Kingaroy. They have other depots based at Roma, here at Gracemere, and another one in Clermont.
How many head of cattle can you fit in trucks?
Depends on the type and the size of cattle as to what you will place on the transport. In general, bullocks you'll load between 20 and 22 cows 22 to 24. Store cattle, depending on their age and size, and calves up to 60 a deck through to 34 to 36 a deck for good young grower cattle.
What are the steps involved in loading a cattle ready for transport?
Make sure that you have the right number of cattle to go on the designated vehicle. You should make sure that your cattle are in good condition before loading, so as that they're going to travel safely. Any sick or lame cattle could go down and cause trouble for the other animals that are moving.
Are all cattle in each load destined for the same place, or sometimes do they get dropped off at bases?
Normally a load will be loaded with cattle destined for the one destination. However, you can have small lots and broken loads, and because of the different compartments in the vehicles, that enables us to stop at different stops.
What kind of places do you deliver?
We deliver to many varied destinations, from properties, point of origin to the saleyards. We deliver from property to property throughout Queensland and Australia, for that matter. We deliver to meatworks, feedlots, and we've just finished doing a consignment to towns where we will deliver the cattle directly onto a base for export to Egypt.
Back to town.
Thank you, Shrek. Stock agents have an important role in the beef industry in the buying and selling of stock. Next, Laura Des speaks to Mr. David Francis of RF Duncan Co about his experience in this field.
Good afternoon, my name is Laura Death, and today I'll be talking to a stock agent, Mr. David Francis, who will tell us about his role in the beef industry. What does a stock agent's job involve?
Laura, a stock agent is a representative for the grazier in negotiating the sale of his cattle or his sheep, any livestock, to either another grazier or to meatworks. We're there for market information for the graziers. We're there to find insurance coverage for graziers. Basically, we're there as a support group for the whole rural industry.
How long have you worked in this field?
Laura, I started as a livestock agent in 1969 in South Australia, and I've been a livestock agent ever since.
What changes have you seen in this time?
There have been thousands of changes, Laura. When I first started in the industry, we would sell our cattle or our sheep or whatever, and then all the paperwork that was all done by hand, and calculations were done with little computers or with women in big offices using machines called comptometers, and then everything was written out by hand or typed in a typing book. These days it's all done on computers. So there's been many changes over the years.
What part of your work do you most enjoy?
The most enjoyable part of the industry is the dealing with rural people, dealing with people in general. It's a very rewarding career.
Do you just work Monday to Friday, or do you need to work on some weekends?
Laura, there's a lot of weekend work. We work whenever people require us, and that could mean Monday to Friday some weeks, but a lot of weekend works at various times.
What kind of people do you represent usually?
Just rural people, graziers in the main, although from time to time we sell a bit of property to somebody from town.
How many hours do you work in an average week?
Our average week would range from 60 to 100 hours a week.
Are you able to tell us the highest price you've ever sold a single animal for?
The highest price I've ever sold an animal for would be around about $15,000 for a stud bull.
What made this animal special?
He was just a very good stud bull that somebody wanted to try and improve their herd, and he had a lot of the attributes that they were looking for, and they were prepared to pay that sort of money.
What places does your work take you?
I can travel just about anywhere in Australia, but my main area at the moment is anywhere from Rockhampton to Gympie in the south, Mackay in the north, and probably Alpha in the west.
What kind of sales would you go to?
Cattle sales in the main, but store cattle sales, which is cattle that are being sold to go back to graziers or into feedlots, and fat cattle sales are the main ones that I go to. We have a few property sales, but not a lot.
In your position, do you have much involvement with the meatworks?
Yes, we deal with the meatworks on a daily basis. We would talk to them most days to see what sort of prices they have available for clients for cattle that are sold direct to the meatworks.
Do different types of cattle sell for different prices?
Most definitely. There is a massive range of prices within the cattle industry, and it depends on whether you're talking about cattle that are going to be sold to be fed on to be fattened, whether you're talking about fat cattle, whether you're talking about stud cattle. They all have various prices.
On average, how many head of cattle would you sell each year?
Over the last 10 years, I would average probably somewhere around 10 to 12,000 head of cattle a year through my office.
How do you think the role of a stock agent will change in the future?
Well, the stock agent's role is always changing. It has to change with technology, it has to change with the way the industry's going. I can see that we're going to become more involved with sales over the internet, more involved with direct selling to meatworks, more involved with upgrading our systems at the sale yards, because we have to have more information available to more people more often. So our job's going to change immensely over the next few years.
Mr. Francis, we appreciate you giving up your time to come and talk to us today. Thank you.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you, Laura. Constantly evolving to meet changing needs, the Gracemere Saleyards play a major role in our local community. Large numbers of people ranging from sightseeing holidaymakers to professional producers attend sales at these saleyards on a weekly basis. This week, Ashley Edwards visited Mr. Peter Priem, manager of the Gracemere Saleyards.
Good afternoon, my name is Ashley Edwards and I'm here with Mr. Peter Priem, who is going to tell me about his experience being a saleyards manager.
Good afternoon, Ashley.
Good afternoon, Mr. Priem. Can you explain what your job involves?
My job is mixed and varied, and that's the one thing I do enjoy here. It is basically to operate the facility as a selling centre, improve it, and ensure that the improvements that are carried out are done in the best interests of animal welfare and personal safety.
What changes have occurred since they first opened?
Well, many changes. The yards here, the old sale yards that are still in existence, which we're diminishing day by day as we build new facilities, but the original yards were only 4 rail high and built for mainly British bred cattle, and therefore they were a lot lower. Then someone introduced these Brahmans to central Queensland, mainly one Mr. Ken Delandles from Cherokee started. And we started building yards. They built 6 yards for the Brahman cattle, thinking that's all they would need. Now we've got predominantly 98% of the cattle that go through here are Brahmans, and those 6 yards have developed into something like 480 yards.
How big are the Saleyards now?
Big in area, we've got a capacity, a comfortable working capacity of about 6,000 head. They cover an area of about 240 acres, and the sales are conducted here usually on about 3 sales per week.
How many cattle would you sell each year?
Consistently selling about 135,000 head a year. That varies depending on seasonal conditions, but generally speaking we're in that 130 to 145,000 head per year.
How does a cattle sale work?
Very well. Cattle arrive and are processed, we call it drafted. They're then segregated into sale lots, and then they're auctioned by the auctioneer. And normally the cattle would be sold on a live weight basis, which means the cattle have to be weighed at some point in that process. And that's usually after they're sold. We've determined the price. The auctioneer will take a price in cents per kilogram. The cattle are then moved out of the pens, weighed, and then put into buyers' yards. And that way we've determined the price, and we've determined the weight, and the computers do the rest of it and work out the overall price of the beast.
How do you see your role changing in the future?
Considerably. Quite significant changes on the horizon. We're seeing a whole host of things coming about that weren't here when I first started. We've seen the introduction of live weight selling. That's been around for many, many years now. Previous to that, cattle were sold just by open auction of so many dollars per head. But we're looking at new methods, new techniques. We're looking at electronic identification as opposed to branding stock with a fire brand or a paint brand. The animals will be fitted out with a ear tag or an ear tag that is has an electronic chip in it, and that will identify the beast. There is an alternative method of putting what is called a bolus. That's something about the size of your thumb down the throat of the beast, and that lodges in the second rumen or the second stomach of the beast, and that has a specific density that allows it to stay there and not be passed through the animal's intestines. Now that means that every time that beast runs past an electronic reader or an antenna, it will identify that beast and tell us who owns it, how old it is, when it was born, all those relevant details. And that will be a significant improvement in the way in which we handle stock, because literally that beast will be putting itself onto a computer. We won't have to type in information. That'll be done electronically and recorded straight onto a computer.
Now thank you for your time with us. Now back to Tian in the studio.
Sounds like the Saleyards will have an interesting future. Thank you, Ashley. The beef industry is constantly changing to meet the needs of the consumer and produce the best product possible. From the paddock to the plate, we can see that this industry is in the hands of dedicated professionals who are committed to its success. We would like to thank everyone who helped us with this project. It has been a wonderful experience, and we hope that we have been able to share some of this with you. This is Tian Feldman, beefing it up from Waraburra State School. Thank you and goodbye.